Usually when I take a look at a film, I focus on what messages the audiences are meant to absorb at the time of the release. And hindsight being 20/20, as they say, it's often easy to see these messages for what they are and expose them to people today. And while we're still going to do a little bit of that for this film, I'd like to take a look at a movie that was culturally important to baby boomers and see how it might be perceived, not by audiences in 1969 when the film was released, but by an audience today. An audience that's aware of the context of the film and the target audience. A film that seemed to speak to the generation that presided over the decline and the crumbling empire that we live in today. And what does that film tell audiences that are growing up in the aftermath and trying to wrestle control from this generation that produced and identified so deeply with this movie? The film that I'm talking about is Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda's Easy Rider. I watched Easy Rider for the first time 50 years after it was released. After reading an interview with Peter Fonda, who was taking a look back at the film that he claimed represented the new Hollywood, the Hollywood of the baby boomers. That it was this film and films like it that signaled the death of the stuffy studio Hollywood and ushered in my opinion, the flood of degeneracy. Free from the shackles of the Hays Code and objective morality, for that matter. Easy Rider was nominated for 2 Oscars, a Golden Globe, and was a winner at the Cannes Film Festival. It was also one of the first films to ditch the traditional soundtrack format that films had been using since the invention of film, and to use contemporary baby boomer rock and roll with songs from bands like Steppenwolf, The Byrds, and Jimi Hendrix. In fact, as someone watching this film in 2019, it really did feel like I was watching this endless boomer music video. And at times, I really think that was a big part of the draw for this film that was released before MTV or music videos were even a thing. Easy Rider starts out with 2 bikers, played by Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda, buying cocaine from Mexicans. Now, this certainly wasn't the film's intention, but as an American watching this in 2019, with a full understanding of exactly who has failed to maintain a border between Mexico and my country, and has been listening to baby boomers drone on about how Mexicans are coming illegally, it's no problem at all because they're doing the jobs that Americans won't do. I have a different view than the original audience in 1969. I view this scene with what I would have to describe as disdain. Disdain that's only going to grow as this movie continues. To me, this scene is just one of countless, unintended though they might be, metaphors. The young boomers caring more about their personal gain, looking to make a quick buck by any means necessary. In the film, they're buying cocaine from Mexicans to poison the sons and daughters of the founding fathers to make a buck, just like older boomers would destroy communities with illegal immigrants so they could make a buck at the expense of Americans. And in the film, the way they make a buck is by selling out to Jewish record executive Phil Spector. Yes, that Phil Spector, the same Phil Spector who murdered a blonde European model in his home and then disguised himself as a woman and managed to evade conviction for years. I wonder what kind of unintended metaphor that spells out in 2019. Strap in, ladies and gentlemen, we're just getting started. So after getting rich by importing crime from Mexico and selling it to a Jewish murderer of white women, 2 baby boomers decide to go to Mardi Gras and party their lives away with the money. The metaphors, they don't stop, trust me. Next, we get a close-up of what the main character is riding on. It's a motorcycle garishly decorated with the American flag. He stuffs this icon of America with his ill-gotten cash, throws away his watch because now that he's sold the country out, he doesn't need to worry about the future. And he rides the American flag until it breaks down. But luckily for him, the two are helped out by a man who has escaped the city and has a homestead, a wife, and several children in New Mexico. This is the one time in the film when I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the filmmakers might be more self-aware than I first imagined. In this part of the film, and this is maybe the only time in the film, the two worlds, the two audiences, the audience in 1969 and me in 2019, the two worlds seem to collide. Peter Fonda's character, the one who rode the American flag stuffed with cash until it broke down, looks at the homesteader's life and seems to admire the man for what he's built. He tells the man that he should be proud, and you really get a sense that there's a part of him that wishes that this was the path he had taken. Which, to be honest, only makes me angrier and hate the characters more. I can no longer view them as ignorant, drugged-up hippies aimlessly wandering through life with no direction. Because of the compliments he gives the homesteader, the only thing you can conclude is that he knows this was a choice, a good choice. But after taking from that man what he needed to ride his money-stuffed American flag and eating the man's food, they continue on their way to Mardi Gras to the sounds of boomer rock. Next, the duo picks up a hippie hitchhiker, and they take him to where he's going. It's a hippie compound that is in stark contrast, a contrast I find equally hilarious and irritating, to the homesteader's ranch. Instead of a man who's productive and the patriarch of his family, a family that is governed by his order, and an order that has produced surplus that allows him to help these two random strangers passing through, the hippies live in a complete lackadaisical chaos. Children are running around aimlessly, everyone's doing drugs and having sex. The hitchhiker explains they didn't even get the crops planted in time, and now they're running out of food. Half of the members of the compound are performing obnoxious, impromptu performance art plays for an audience too stoned to notice how terrible it is, while the other half tries to plant crops by wandering around in the dirt, tossing seeds recklessly onto the ground as they're high as kites. It's like a boomer Lord of the Flies, an entire community of rootless Woodstock attendees making love, not war, or food in the wilderness. Almost every resident of this clown show reaches a level of hippie that kind of incites violence in reasonable people. And after mingling with this commune, very respectfully, of course, what they're doing is very revolutionary. It's very awe-inspiring. But alas, after a few days of constantly smoking marijuana and having sterile sex, the two continue on their way to Mardi Gras. Next, we see the first of many instances where the film will repeatedly demonize white Southerners and frame them as the real enemy of the people, the enemy of the generation. They are the opposite of everything that the boomer stands for. They are racist, sexist, homophobes, prone to random acts of violence and oppression. The two bikers are arrested when they happen upon a small-town parade and decide to inject themselves into it rather than respecting the order of the community. And then instead of understanding what they did wrong, they complain about the weirdo hicks in the town. And as they do, in what seems to be a requirement in Hollywood movies today and then, they mock the town's Christianity. While in jail, they meet Jack Nicholson's character, who apparently is the son of someone important in town, and also an alcoholic lawyer that was locked up from the debauchery of the night before. They locked him up so he could sleep off his hangover. He uses his influence with the police to get the two out of prison, and they invite him to go along with them to Mardi Gras. He tells them that there's a whorehouse that he's always wanted to go to and agrees to come along. On the way to Mardi Gras, they stop off somewhere in the scary white Deep South, in a town basically straight out of Deliverance. And they go to a restaurant that refuses to serve them. The locals at the next table openly discuss what they're going to do with the long-haired gay people that have rolled into town, while the desperate young Southern girls drool and fawn all over them because they're so cool they can't help but make overt sexual advances towards them. They decide to leave town because they feel like it's dangerous, but they don't go far enough, apparently. And the randomly violent, evil, racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe Southerners go to their camp in the middle of the night and, for no reason at all, severely beat them, one of them, to death. So, for no reason, they beat up the two bikers and murder Jack Nicholson's character. And what happens next is even more bizarre. And I honestly don't even really know what to think about it, other than, once again, it shows kind of how self-centered and free of personal responsibility the characters are. A man they invited to ride with them to Mardi Gras, who was completely innocent, helped them out, got him out of prison, was just murdered for being with them, and there's zero time devoted to what they should do to, like, notify law enforcement or maybe get revenge or something. In fact, there's nothing in the film to suggest that they didn't just leave him there at the side of the road and just keep going to Mardi Gras like nothing happened. The only real tribute they offer to him is after going through his wallet, they find the name of the whorehouse in New Orleans and decide, oh, let's go to the whorehouse that he wanted to go to, to honor him. That's what he would have wanted. I mean, and this movie's full of jarring edits, scenes that don't seem to like really go together very well. And I think a lot of that was due to this being Hopper's first movie. He just didn't know what he was doing. But even if you account for that, it really strikes me as sociopathic how casually they handle the loss of the beating to death loss of their friend and just continue on their pleasure-seeking journey. So in the next scene, they get to the whorehouse, they rent out two prostitutes, and go on a drug-fueled adventure through Mardi Gras. They eventually wind up doing acid in a graveyard, and the scene that follows, it's just reminiscent of every single drug scene in every student film ever made. Just a series of random cuts passed off as artistic. And in a lot of ways, it's also kind of just an excuse to show the prostitutes without their clothes on. So the random pseudo-artistic shots depicting the acid trip goes on and like far longer than necessary. And kind of gives you the impression after a while that it's edited this way specifically for the hippies in the audience who they know are going to get high in preparation for the film. So it's like a little treat for the people that are on acid in the audience. Because other than that, it's just obnoxious. Like, it goes on way too long, and there's no meaning behind it. There's no deep, like, whoa, message to it at all. It's just random, stupid art film crap. Well, and naked ladies. And then it transitions quickly and jarringly into the next scene where you don't even know what happened to the prostitutes. They're just magically gone. And the two are camping out at the side of the road, leaving Mardi Gras behind, apparently. And the most famous line of the film is spoken. And for a moment, I'm tempted, just for a second, to view this as a sign, once again, of self-awareness. Dennis Hopper's character is celebrating the fact that they have all this money from their drug deal, and they just went to Mardi Gras and partied with hookers, and everything went just how they planned. No mention of the guy that got beat to death along the way. And then Peter Fonda's character, who isn't as celebratory as his friend, looks at him and just says, "No, we blew it." We blew it. Hopper and Fonda have never said what they meant by that line. And when they have talked about it, they make it seem as though it's meant to mean whatever the audience wants to apply it to. And this audience in 2019 knows exactly what to apply it to. You did blow it. You had it all, and you sold us out so you could have your little adventure with your pockets full of cash, and you blew it. You kicked Humpty Dumpty right the fuck off the wall and watched him tumble and crash into a million pieces because you were too high to do anything else. You and your generation fucking blew it. And just like Dennis Hopper himself, you won't live long enough to reap what you've sown. This movie is quite literally, in every way imaginable and unimaginable, peak fucking boomer. And to top it all off, as if the filmmakers know how this has to end and wants to blame shift once again, throw all the responsibility that they spent their entire lives avoiding, shift it all, take it all, and place that responsibility on the people they spent the entire movie demeaning. You see, for no reason, literally no reason at all, while riding their motorcycles peacefully through the South, not hurting nobody, an old Southern farmer decides to just blow them both away with his shotgun. Really, like for no reason, just they drive by, he gets a shotgun out and just murders them for no reason. Other than he's a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. So he blows them away and sends their iconic American bike and their money up in flames. The filmmakers knew exactly how this had to end, and they picked the laziest scapegoat possible to avoid any responsibility for the consequences of their actions. And ladies and gentlemen, that is why boomers love Easy Rider. For BlackPilled, I'm Devin Steck. If you like my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you share. As of today, Audible finally has the audiobook version of my book. You can get the link in the description, or also paperback link in the description. If you want to support my videos, you can send crypto to one of the addresses below or become a patron at patreon.com/BlackPilled.